Okay, good morning, class. Today we're going to be reading a testimony or an excerpt from the story of a child refugee from the country of Liberia. Can anyone tell me where Liberia is located? Moses?
Western Africa.
Western Africa, very good. And you're going to be reading a small excerpt of his testimony about his experiences in Liberia and why he chose to leave Liberia. Additionally, we're going to practice a skill called Authenticating Testimony. Now, I know that sounds complicated and challenging, but it's much easier than you think. So over the next 15-20 minutes, we're going to talk about the skill of authenticating testimony, and you're going to practice on an actual piece of testimony from the young man from Liberia. Alrighty. And this testimony was taken from a group or a compilation of testimonies and stories from children who are child refugees and have been forced to flee their homes. And the book is called Making It Home, Real Life Stories from Children Forced to Flee, and it's by an author named Beverley and Naidoo. Okay, so for the introduction activity for this lesson, I want you to do a turn and talk to your neighbor. So I want you to take 30 seconds and discuss with your seat partner what is testimony. And if you can't come up with a definition of what testimony is, just talk about where you've heard this word being used before. So go ahead, turn, talk to your neighbor, take 30 seconds. 25 seconds. What is testimony? Where have you heard it before? 15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Okay, let's bring it back together now. I want you to either tell me what you think testimony is or where you've heard the word being used before. Moses, what do you think testimony is?
I think testimony is like you want to tell somebody thank you about what it did for you, and I heard that in church before.
Yes. Okay, so you want to tell someone a story about what
it did for you, like thank you.
About what something did for you, right? The impact of something on your life. You've heard it in church before where people give their testimony. What else? Anything else? Maris?
I heard it in a speech.
In a speech, okay.
And I think that testimony is when you like something or when you don't like something with your opinions.
Okay, so a testimony can be an opinion. That's a really interesting thing to add. Isaiah?
I heard in church, and it's like when you're going against each other, like having done what you want done.
Okay, Joel?
I heard it in church again, and but it's like a real life story that happens to you that you got out of.
Okay, so it's a real life story of something that happens to a person directly. Can we agree on a definition along those lines, do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So the actual definition of testimony is it's a first-hand account of an event, and it is an example of a primary source. Now, maybe some of you have actually heard testimony in terms of a court case. When someone gives their testimony in front of the jury and they say what story they saw or their version of an event.
Like a witness.
Like a witness, good. So a person who gives testimony is a witness to an event. And it is a primary source. Remember, because a primary source is a first-hand account of something. Very good. Okay, now I want you to take 30 seconds. And this one's a little more challenging, but I believe you can handle it. So, what does it mean when something is described as being authentic? Have you heard this word before, authentic?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe some of you have heard it. Again, you can tell me where you've heard it. But if someone says that's authentic, what are they trying to tell you, or what are they describing? So take 30 seconds again and talk about what it means if something is authentic or where you've heard it.
It's value.
Where have you heard it before? 20 seconds. There's no right or wrong answers. We're just trying to activate the background knowledge. 15 seconds.
It's important.
5 seconds. All right, let's bring it back together. So when something's authentic, what does it mean? Or where have you heard this before, Chad?
I think it means like that, like it's value and it's important.
So it's valuable, it's important. What else, Balmeris?
Original, one of a kind.
It's original, one of a kind. Very good. And if we say that a statement is authentic, are we trying to describe if it's true or if it's false?
True.
True. So if we said something was authentic, we were also saying that it's valuable, it's important, and it's true. And we can prove that it's true. So you need to find something called authenticity. And authenticity is just a fancy word meaning you found proof that these things are real or factual. So if you're looking for the authenticity of something, you're trying to prove that that thing is based in fact and is real. Any questions on that? Joel.
Secondary source.
And it's a secondary source. So let's make the connection now. Why should we make sure that testimony is authentic? Why do we need to make sure that testimony is authentic? Moses?
To prove that it is true and that it's real, that you was there when things happen.
Okay, so to prove that it's true or that it's real and that you were absolutely there when things happen? Yes.
You could tell your story that how it happened to you.
So good, so you can tell your story about how something happened to you. Very nice. And if something is authentic, or if someone's testimony is authentic, it makes it more reliable, right?
Yeah.
And it also makes it more valuable to us because it can give us a stronger example of something that happened in an event or a conflict. Yeah. No, she's not here. Yes. Okay. Alright, so how do we do this though? There's the next question. How can we prove that something is authentic? And that's what we're going to look at right now. So let's backtrack. I just want to ask you what sources you would use if you were trying to answer these particular questions. So if you wanted to learn about what a word meant. Say you wanted to learn what a word meant. Raise your hand if you can tell me, how would you check that? How could you check that fact or look that up? Aaliyah?
You can go on Google or dictionary.com.
You could use a what, everybody?
A dictionary.
A dictionary. Okay, let's try the next one. Say you wanted to learn where a country was. What are some ways to find that information? Steven?
Map.
A map. What else? Balmeris?
Atlas.
An atlas, which is a book of maps. And what else?
A globe.
A globe. You guys read my mind here. A map, a globe, or an atlas. Say you wanted to learn about a particular group of people. Where could you go to find that information, Chad?
The library.
The library. And what would you find in the library? Be specific.
Books.
What kind of books, Moses?
History books.
History books, so a textbook. What else could you do if you wanted to learn about a group of people? Isaiah?
I was doing the internet.
So the internet's fine. You could look it up, right? What else? If you're trying to find out about people of a different country, what's the best place to find that information? If you can, Balmeris.
Biography.
Biography is good. What are you gonna say, Moses?
I forgot. Let me see.
So what I was thinking was interviews, right?
Oh yeah.
You could ask someone who was in that place. So internet, textbook, encyclopedia, interviews. Last question. Here we go. Where would you look if you wanted to see when an event occurred? Say you wanted to look up a date or a time, and you wanted to go and find that information. Where could you go for that? Go ahead, Moses.
You can use answer.com computer maybe.
So the computer, the internet, and Isaiah again.
A calendar.
A calendar. Okay, calendar works. What else? Raise your hand.
Textbook.
Raise your hand. Joel.
Textbook.
Textbook, good. So you could go to a newspaper. Don't forget about the importance of newspapers. You could go to a textbook, or you can go to like official government records even, if you really wanted to check the facts. Now, your next task is you're going to take all of this and put it together. So what I want you to do is, you're going to silently read the testimony of a young refugee from Liberia. It's right in front of you. I want you to then highlight 2 lines you think are very important to understanding his story. So you have a highlighter. As you read, highlight 2 things that he says that you think are the most important to understanding his story. Finally, I want you to take your Post-it note to mark on the text what secondary sources you would use to check the fact. So you're going to highlight 2 important lines that you think make his testimony very, very strong. You're going to use a Post-it note and tell me what secondary source you could use to check the fact, right? And then we're going to discuss it. Because I want you to see that primary sources are very, very important, but we have to make sure that we authenticate them or check for their authenticity or the proof. Because like you guys told me, if we can find proof in their facts and their information, that makes it way more reliable. And that makes the testimony stronger. So we use secondary sources to help us back up primary sources. Are there any questions about what I'm asking you to do? All right, have at it. Shouldn't take you too long. So just read through the testimony of the young man from Liberia and highlight 2 lines that you think are the most important things that he says. And then just tell me, you don't actually have to tell me where or show me how you're going to look it up. Just tell me where you would go to look up that information to prove it. Okay. It's a short reading, so you guys should only probably need about another minute. When you finish, just put your highlighter down. Make sure you're writing on the Post-it note next to the line to show me where you would go and find the authenticity of that testimony. Where would you go to look up the fact? So make sure you're using your Post-it notes and marking them next to the lines. Just tell me where you could go to check that fact. What secondary source could you use to check the primary? Make sure you've highlighted the 2 important lines. So all you need to write on the Post-it notes is 1 word telling me what secondary source you could use to check that fact. Tell me where you would go if you were going to check the fact. Just highlight 2 statements that you think are very important. Write on the Post-it note where you would go to find that fact. All right, do I have any volunteers to get us started? Anyone want to read me the line that you used and then tell me where you would go to check that fact? Moses?
I picked our home was completely destroyed, and most of my people are now dead.
Okay, so this line right here, our home was completely destroyed and most of my people are now dead. Where would you go to check and see if that was true?
I would be like go on the computer, use a book in the library.
Okay, so go on the computer, use the book in the library, and what would you look up?
How people's houses were destroyed in Liberia.
So you want to look up his village in Liberia, right, and see what's left of it. Very good. Anyone else? Another volunteer in Isaiah?
The sentence, but there are no schools functioning there and no law and order.
Okay, so the sentence right here, but there are no schools functioning there and no law and order. Where could you go to check that fact?
I will go on the internet and search up law in Liberia to see if there's actually no law.
Excellent. So you would want to look towards the internet and more current events to check that fact to see if you could get some information on the status of law in Liberia today. What's something else that someone highlighted and they want to tell me where they would go to find that information? Someone give me another line they highlighted. Chad, give me a line you highlighted.
They said five brothers and 4 sisters, but during the war, 3 of my brothers and 3 of my sisters were killed.
Okay, so you highlighted, I used to have 5 brothers and 4 sisters, but during the war, 3 of my brothers and 3 of my sisters were killed. Where could you go to make sure that that information is truthful?
So get a textbook.
You think his family would be in a textbook?
Interview.
An interview with who?
Back.
This is an interview with him. Where else could you go, Joelle?
Official records.
Official records, right? So birth and death certificates, if there were some available, you would look towards the official records to check that information. I'll take one more. One more volunteer. Someone else. You're doing a great job, Moses. I just want someone else to give me an example. Where else would you go? Go ahead, Joelle. Read one of yours.
I didn't think we would have to.
Someone give me another line. Isaiah. Do one more.
I would like to go back to Liberia one day and there is peace there.
Okay, so I would like to go back to Liberia one day when there is peace there. Where would you go to find if there was peace in Liberia?
I would look at a textbook because it would say how like the war happened and then it would say how it settled down.
Okay, so maybe a textbook would be updated enough to tell us how the conflict was resolved. Very good. Mamaris?
I would check the newspaper.
Excellent. So don't forget that newspapers can be really, really great secondary and primary sources even on events. And newspapers are very, very helpful for checking things like this where it's based on more current events. Any questions on what we did today?
No.
Any questions?
No.
All right, you guys did